but then there are certain factors, certain indicators which you can pick up as general practitioners when you find the parents complaining about their children that he keeps on being verbally aggressive in his childhood, he is aggressive towards the siblings, or if the child is carrying any dangerous weapons with him. For a child, even a safety pin or maybe even just a cutter can be a dangerous weapon to carry around in his school bag. If the child does not show any guilt or any feelings of remorse after the act of aggression, then the parents should be a little worried about it. If the child is directing this aggression towards siblings, so you need to understand that if it is very frequent and very severe, where you cannot keep your other child along with the child who is aggressive, it's a serious matter. But then if this aggression is seen even outside, in the school bus, outside while playing, and if there are lots of complaints from the school, then it's a serious thing which needs to be looked after. What is the motive of the child to be aggressive? Most of the times, with parents, the motive is to gain something. That is, if the child wants some article, some toys, some food, the child would throw a tantrum. Many times with peers or siblings, the motive is to show that he is powerful, he or she is powerful than the other child. Many times a child would do this just out of sadism, that is, he gets pleasure out of teasing others, hitting others. This is something which is serious because these children can grow up to become psychopaths. Suicide is again another form of aggression, but which is directed towards that own person. So it's not directed outwards, it's an aggression directed inwards. There are many children nowadays, especially adolescents, whom you would have read about committing or attempting suicide, especially after the results. But then the 10th results or the 12th results are actually not the only thing which push a child towards suicide. There are many underlying things which are usually ignored by the parents or the teachers and which would have started long before the child has committed suicide. There are threats which the child might give. Now we have to understand what are fake threats and what are real threats. There are many children who would threaten the parents to attempt suicide because they want something and because they are not getting something. And that's why you need to go deeper into the history to find out that are these threats real or they are unreal. But then when a child has attempted suicide, that means you have to take it very seriously. But then there have been cases where the child has just taken 2 tablets of paracetamol and the parents rush panicking that this child has attempted suicide, what do I do? So I ask, what has happened? This child did not get the PlayStation, and that's why the child has done this, and the child has come up himself to tell us that, oh mama, I have taken these 2 tablets and I wanted to die. So why? Because I wanted that thing and you didn't give me that. So now when you consider this as serious suicide, then you should reconsider it, that why the child is saying this. It might not be the real thing which the child wants to do, but it's just a kind of threat which the child is giving. Ideation, suicidal ideation, where the child talks about dying or talks about leaving the world, or might even write down some poems or something in his diary about dying, about hopelessness. When you start seeing such kind of gestures, you will have to think that probably this could be the beginning of depression in the child. What is the motive and the intent of the child? As I told you, to gain something, whether it's an article, a toy, or it's just to show power. What is the method adopted by the child to attempt suicide is very important, and what is most important is the family history. If there has been a family history of suicide in either of the parents, completed suicide in any of the family members, or if there is severe psychopathology in the family where there are lots of fights within the parents or lots of psychosocial stressors, then definitely the child is going through lots of stress. Now, what are the factors that influence the need for parents to seek help? The most important factors are parental factors. And when I say parental factors, it's usually the mother who faces the brunt of the child's behavior, because most of the times the father is outside, the mother stays with the child, or spends, even a working mother spends more time with the child than the father. So the mother is the one who would come up with symptoms or who would come to seek help first. And now here, the tolerance of the mother to take the child's behavior is very important, because you find lots of females, 40% of prevalence of depression and anxiety in mothers, and that's why if the mother has poor tolerance for such kind of behaviors, then the mother can walk in the clinic for help much more frequently than the mother who is psychiatrically healthy or is able to take these issues in a better way. Single parent, definitely the brunt is more on the single parent. Age of parents is also important, because nowadays you find that many elderly couples go for conception, and that's the reason when they are 45 or 50 they have a toddler to look after, which becomes very difficult for an elderly couple to take care of a child who is very hyperactive normatively till the age of 4 years. Working parents definitely are unable to give time to the child. Nuclear families, you will find that in a joint family, usually the grandparents usually step in and say that कोई psychiatrist की ज़रूरत नहीं है, हम लोग ने 4 बच्चों को बड़ा किया है, तो ये ऐसा ही है, अच्छा है, इसको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. Many times nuclear families, educated people who read about things, they are the ones who would want to seek help because they want to fix problems instantly. Socioeconomic status, definitely if there are low socioeconomic status, if parents from low socioeconomic status would come to you for more of academic problems rather than behavioral problems of a child. Because behavioral problems are quite common in low socioeconomic status and they are tolerated by the parents from that kind of strata. Now, what are the factors in the child which influence the need for help? Gender, because in males ADHD is double, its prevalence is quite more, the ratio is 2:1 from males to females in ADHD. Age of the child, in younger children, usually if the problems are mild to moderate, they are not brought for help because most of the parents feel that they will grow out of these problems. Definitely intensity and frequency of the problems, if it is more, then the help is sought more. Academic impairment, again as I have told you, if there is academic impairment, parents are more worried about the child's progress in studies, and if he is lagging behind after say 3rd standard or 4th standard, they are brought in more for the counseling. Suicidal threats and aggression, and especially complaints from the school, if they are more, then the child is brought in for help. Differential diagnosis, as I have told you, of the behavioral problems are ADHD, oppositional defiant disorders. See, now we categorize this disorder just for the sake of management, because we need to know that what child can be put into which kind of disorder so that we can manage the child accordingly. We can define the prognosis of the child and we can manage the parental education accordingly. Substance abuse should not be ruled out in today's children when cannabis, nicotine and alcohol is very well rampant and it is easily available throughout. Recent negative life events very commonly seen in children with behavioral problems, parental suppression, problems within parents, change of school, change of place. The complications of untreated problems, as all of you know, would be personal, social, academic. You would end up having a maladjusting adult. Depression is very common in children who are untreated. Substance is very common in children who have untreated ADHD. Social withdrawal, like poor social skills, are very common. Academically, naturally poor performance anxiety, refusal to go to school, and socially unstable peer relationships, poor relation with the parents, delinquent and antisocial behavior ahead in the child are very common. Management, early intervention is the best management. The earlier you pick up these problems, the better you will be able to treat the problems and prevent any further complications. Early recognition has 3 points at which these problems can be recognized. First is the parents, teachers, and then the family physicians or pediatricians. And how do we manage the problems? Definitely thorough clinical history, interviewing the child, which is the most difficult part, feedback from the teachers, which even you as general physicians can take. There are lots of rating scales which you can find online, especially which are used are Connors parent rating scale, teachers rating scale. You can get Xerox of this rating scales, give them to the parents and the teacher of the child. You will get a better idea about what are the behavioral problems in the child. So feedback from teachers is important. Psychological tests are done if needed, especially in children who we suspect would be having learning problems. Parental training is the most important aspect of management because the parents should know what are the strengths and weaknesses of the problems. If the parents are not aware about the motives of the child's behavior and if the parents are not aware of their own behavior, the treatment fails. Pharmacological treatment is usually used in moderate to severe ADHD, in aggression, in depression, and all other cases where there are severe psychiatric problems. Counseling is majorly with parents and with children who are able to understand their problems themselves, who are motivated for counseling, who are motivated to talk. And as the strip shows that get some friends, 5 cents please, it should have been that easier for us psychiatrists to counsel, but alas it is not. And I think I'm done with time. I have 5 minutes, but I think all of you are hungry, half of you are sleepy, and the rest of you are happy that it's over. So thank you.
Pochi to felicitate Madam with a shawl. Please come in front for the photo opportunity, Madam. Thank you. I call upon Dr. Niyaz Sheikh to felicitate Madam with a memento. Madam, will you please wait for 5 minutes? This lecture was sponsored by Sun Pharmaceutical and Thank you, Sun Pharma. We have one more sponsor.
Thank you.
Dr. Netaji Muri from our hospital. Dr. Muri. And last time before lunch, Dr. Sushil Sharma with his abracadabra.
Sir, जल्दी करो. Dr. Nargis Sheikh. She wins carom singles and carom doubles. See, both husband and wife winning the carom championship. Very nice. And third, badminton doubles runner-up she is. All three. Dr. Veena Kavlekar, badminton doubles runner-up. Dr. Veena. And Matka King ki wife, Dr. Taranum Pochi, carom doubles runner-up. ये मटके से नहीं है, मेहनत करके जीला.
मटका मेरे पास है.
Yeah, मटका आपके पास. And now, before lunch, the best prize, and over to Matka King. Come.
प्रीवियस सेशन का लास्ट लकी ड्रॉ